Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Geek Vibes Nation. I am your content manager, Tia, and I have back with me finally Kelly. Yay!
Hello. I know it's been a minute, but happy to be back.
I'm gonna edit in like applause when I do that. So it's just like a
Okay.
whole thunderous.
Woo.
Yeah, exactly. But I am very happy that you're here, Kelly, and we are actually going to be reviewing Gen V, the spin-off for The Boys on Amazon Prime. Spoilers. So many spoiler warnings. So just want to like throw that out there. And
We're
I think
diving into it all. So,
we're diving into it all. 8 episodes released week by week. I just wanted to throw out there really quick that I'm really happy that we didn't have a break that other streaming services seem to be doing with their shows. I realized that because I saw something. I think they said when Stranger Things comes back on Netflix, oh, it'll be taking a break. And I'm like, thankfully Gen V was just week by week. We didn't have to
oh, you
wait.
mean like there's like a month in between, or
Mm-hmm.
that like traditional cable used to do like they would come back for fall, then go
Mm-hmm.
off for the holidays and come back for the new year or break in the summer. But like that's not how people watch TV nowadays.
No, so I am happy that we got it week by week, and apparently Gen V is going to lead into season 4 of The Boys, which I'm very happy about because I am very excited about The Boys. So let's just dive into our review. We're going to do it as a structure of pros and then cons. So if you want to see what we didn't like about Gen V, you got to keep watching. Okay, let's say that. I'm going to pull up my list here and kind of go one by one. I want to start honestly with just like the little things. I liked all the cameos that we got. We got Victoria Newman, Soldier Boy, Homelander, Ashley, even the theater dude. So I kind of liked all the cameos. It wasn't obnoxious, but then also help you remember that this takes place within the boys.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was they had the perfect little additives and like playoffs of things from the boys, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't do it so much that this world felt like it couldn't form its own identity. So there were some of those parallels, like really great small comments and nods to the boys too throughout the season. But again, in a tasteful way that allowed you to stay immersed in this world and treat this season as separate from the boys. So it wasn't fully steeped into what the boys was. It had its own identity.
Yeah. And you and I were talking about because week by week, Kelly and I were just messaging each other what we thought about each episode. We really liked that it was set in college.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely liked that it was set in college. I feel like that was a really good setting to bring all different kinds of soups into the picture. I think also the college setting is such a good place just from a writing standpoint. You have romance, you have jealousy, you have politics, you have people reaching for power. There's so many different themes and much more relatable themes, I think, than the boys. So I think it could reach a wider breadth in terms of audience here because there's just so much more they can do with it and many more characters they can introduce and bring into the story.
And I think I was telling you that I get really uncomfortable watching things that are set in high school because there's always going to be moments where, and maybe I don't know if I sound like a prude or old or something, but you have characters that are obviously going to be intimate with each other. And even though the actors are of age, when it's in a high school setting, it's like really uncomfortable to see what, like, say, freshmen or sophomores are doing. So at least when it's in a college setting, you're like, okay, this is palatable pretty much. So that's why I like the college setting.
Yeah, and I think too, like the things that they're dealing with, the personal struggles,
Mhm.
whether it was like low self-esteem or, what's the word I'm thinking of like a struggle with a parent to see eye to eye on something. Um, and like those kinds of conflicts, I think those could be really relatable and resonate in a lot of different ways for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we keep going with the pros, do you have a character out of the season that really stood out to you?
Like in terms of my favorite or
Yeah, like who would be your favorite out? Because obviously there were so many new characters introduced. So I didn't know who you would say is your favorite.
maybe Jordan?
I put you on the spot there.
Yeah. Yeah, or Emma. I mean, probably one of those two.
I want to say that when the season first started, Emma started as my favorite, but then I kind of really liked Kate only because once you found out everything that happened with Kate and how she had been held back by Shetty and then kind of just became a little bit of a psycho, I kind of liked that. So then all of a sudden she became my favorite character because I realized how powerful she was. So, but Emma started as it because I felt really bad for Emma and how she achieved her powers. And then
Right.
she also had just like a really spunky attitude that I thought was really cute.
I felt like she was the most grounded, even though she
Mm-hmm.
had some like really outrageous scenes. I was like, okay, this just seems like almost like just a regular character in a show who happens to have a superpower versus some of them felt like they were defined by their superpowers. So that's kind of what I liked about her.
Yeah. I don't know. The actress there just really sold that performance. But Jordan was really good. Both of the actors who played them, I thought, did a great job in making um the character believable that these
Yeah.
two people who were playing this one character were actually just one character. So I did like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, let's see. Oh, in our pros, we obviously talked about the world building. You kind of touched upon that earlier. It's really weird seeing, I mean, I guess not weird because Vought is just this super giant business machine that they literally are just cranking these soups into this college. And then when you realize like how many of them aren't going to actually be anything, they're all going to be essentially like B-rated actors.
Yeah. I think I just feel like this season cranked up the dial on everything compared to the boys, which is like crazy to say because the boys pushed so many boundaries. But I mean, Gen V was more graphic. There was, more nudity and sexual content. I even like there was one point where I was like the hero gasm episode of the boys now seems like
Tame.
inconsistent game. Like the cock explosion scene. I mean, there's just so many things this season that was like they wanted to take it to the next level and really dial it up. And I definitely think in terms of like the world building, I don't know if Gen V could have necessarily worked as well on its own if it didn't come from this world that so many people were already invested in and loved so much. So I think that they really did a great job with making it a spin-off in its own identity, but still connecting it to this world that, we've all really tapped into and become invested in.
Yeah. And with the connection to the boys, one of my pros that I thought was with the character Shetty, who is the head of God U. What's the actual name of the university? Like Godalkin or something like that?
Vulcan. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's the head of it. And you think she's like a normal person. She's not a soup, but she's obviously working with all these young soups, but then you find out that not only is she working to kind of kill all of them, which you and I were confused about at first. We were like, why would Vought essentially want her to develop a serum to kill them when they're cash cows? But then finding out that Shetty's family died in that plane episode in season one, I thought was a really good way of not only explaining why she dislikes the suits, but then also connecting it to probably the most horrific thing to happen in the boys.
Yeah, agreed. I liked that as well, and I thought it was a nice way to tie those two things together, give backstory without it being like they're trying so hard to make this relatable.
Yeah, and not to stay on the plane episode for so long, but I now that we've had what 3 seasons of the boys, now we have Gen V. I like that episode isn't just an episode to show how messed up Homelander is, and just for shock value, that there's actual long-term consequences to what happened there. So I like that Gen V even used that, because that scene in that episode, I can't rewatch it, but that episode just has long-lasting effects. So I like that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I wanted to, I think we're done with our pros like section. I wanted to ask if you had any other like pro that you wanted to kind of like throw out there before we get to the cons.
I would say the only other thing is I felt like the action sequences and the conflict, it did feel more layered compared to the boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably just because of the different soups that we're working with a younger cast, and things are more relatable. But I definitely, like, as the season progressed and we had more of these individual storylines, like working towards like a common build-up goal ending, whatever you want to call it, that there is much more nuance and layers to it than I found with the boys, at least in more recent seasons.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. I can definitely see that. All right, so let's go to the cons. I want to so I had a few things, right? And we were talking about how rushed this season felt, especially in those first few episodes. And it was one of those things where I didn't know if they knew that if they were going to be renewed for a season 2. Like, The Boys gets renewed pretty early on for seasons, but Gen V got renewed, I think, around the 5th episode mark. I don't know. It felt like they didn't know if it was going to get renewed or not, because they threw a lot in there, and you felt the same way.
Yeah, my initial reaction, I remember messaging you after I watched the first episode or whatever, first couple of episodes. And my initial reaction, which like has changed, but there's still many instances where I feel this way. I just didn't feel the same like investment in or emotional buy-in right off the bat to the characters. And I feel like that was because everything was kind of glossed over and rushed. And, they had so many different people and storylines that they wanted to introduce, but I feel like they did it very hurriedly, and they could have steeped longer and more emotional moments to create more of a connection between the audience and these characters. And I think over time within the season that did grow. And there was so much more emotional buy-in than when it first started. But I think if the season continued as it did with that like first initial 1 or 2 episodes, I wouldn't have felt the same about it, because I was just like, okay, like bunch of people, things are happening, but like I didn't feel like that sense of connection. So that definitely grew as it went on.
Yeah, I mean, if you just take a brief second to compare it to season 1 of The Boys, we get introduced to Huey. We obviously see what happens to him after his girlfriend gets killed by A-Train, but I feel his investment and even wanting to work with Billy Butcher developed over time. It just felt more of a natural progression. We were introduced to the evils of Vought and Homelander in a longer period of time than Gen V. I kind of felt like Marie, I think in the first or second episode, where I believe it was either Andre or Jordan was like, you have to help us. And she's like, why? I don't know you guys. And I said, okay, at least someone's acknowledging this, because it feels as if they're trying to squish them together way too quickly.
I also with Marie, just like her backstory was I just like so typical, like kind of cliche, and that was rushed over as well. Like there could have been so much more to it than just the like we barged in moment of teen angst, powers out of control. But I also just felt like I don't know, it didn't feel like anything new or fresh to me.
No, and I think they kind of touched upon that when she was having a conversation with Kate and Jordan, and Kate was explaining what happened with her brother. And it kind of the show is kind of letting you know that, yeah, this is typical. Pretty much all these soups have killed someone close to them once their powers get in. And it's like, oh, that's really messed up. And I don't know if that's a good little additive to the show and the world, or if that's just kind of, I don't know, lazy almost.
One of the things I did like was that it, for her in particular, happened when she got her first period, because that in and of itself for a woman is such an emotional, confusing time. So to put on top of that the discovery of powers, like I really wish that they brought more of that into it, and like we could have explored how that had like a whole impact on who she's become today.
Yeah. I that's true. It was very shocking because at first it was kind of a very wholesome family moment. They were seeing A Train getting introduced into the Seven, and then all of a sudden both of her parents are dead. I was like, oh, that's messed up. And then as we could see throughout the season, her sister wants absolutely nothing to do with her. So
That's
um
the thing, is like she is constantly throughout the season wanting to find and reconnect with her sister, but they did not build enough backstory or connection between her and her sister for me as a viewer to like care about her mission to find her sister. I feel like we don't really know anything about her sister in general, or what their relationship was like before that moment happened.
Yeah, they could have definitely done some flashback scenes. The most they did was the sister looking scared, and then I believe even some like manipulative moments in Kate's mind where the sister was taunting Marie, and then you're told that the sister wants nothing to do with her. But yeah, they could have certainly built that up more. And I think the problem was that they were trying to introduce all these characters with the level of you're supposed to care about them all equally. And so then it kind of gives little screen time for who's obviously your main Marie, right?
Yep.
And if I talk about, say, being very rushed and stuff, I have to say that just to kind of move on from that, there were a few forced romances in this season. And I know the internet because I'm very active on like Twitter X and Tumblr and TikTok. People really like Jordan and Marie, and I felt as if their relationship had no buildup.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is just totally in line with what we've been saying. They didn't invest the time into like um creating enough backstory and connection for it to be believable.
Mm-hmm.
And even like that like raw, sexy tension, and then that moment of getting together, just like that wasn't there. It's almost like it just, you blinked, it happened, and there was really no payoff.
I felt the same way that I felt with I think it was the third season, if you remember, of The Boys, that Billy Butcher got with Maeve. And I thought that was a little forced when that happened. So I kind of felt the same way with Jordan and Marie. I don't know. It could have been done better. Maybe get them together later on in the season or even in the second season, but it just felt very forced, their whole relationship. And I don't know how you felt about the Andre and Kate relationship, but that to me felt very forced as well.
I remember talking to you about this because I either missed something or think I was confused. I thought in an earlier episode that they had like all three of them been hooking up.
You had said
I
that,
don't know
yeah.
if I made that up in my head. I think I did. So I thought it was like just a natural, like they had already been doing this, not like, oh, you went behind your boy's back and you're doing this. So like I viewed that whole relationship, I think, differently than I probably should have, just because I like invented a backstory to it, I think.
I mean, maybe you're right. Like, maybe I need to go back and rewatch the first episode or
I really
so.
don't know where it came from, but I thought that they were like a thrup, not like a
A
hardcore
thruple.
thruple, but like, you know. So I mean, and so I mean, the relationships in general, Tia, I have to say, I think the Sam Emma one, like they did right by that. So they
Yes.
know the formula, and they know how to make a believable, we're slowly coming together type of affection and romance, but they just didn't apply that to everybody. They just
That's
didn't give everybody the screen time for it.
That's true. The Emma and Sam romance, I thought, was a nice progression of a relationship. And now I don't know what's going to happen with the two of them, since in the ending, spoilers again, Sam and Kate, even though they went on a murderous rampage on the college campus, are being hailed as the heroes, whereas Marie, Andre, Emma, and Jordan are now in this like facility where there's no doors and yada yada. So I don't know what that then beckons for Sam and Emma. I kind of think that that may be over with, which is a shame because it felt like the most tangible relationship in the show.
Yeah, I think that will be an interesting storyline for them to navigate in the future.
Yeah, and just to talk about the ending, just because that just happened, what, a few days ago. I think you felt the same or a similar way than I did. I felt there was no payoff. I felt that the ending was very much, I don't know, it happened, right? So just as a quick thing, they release all these students that they had locked up. They go crazy on the college campus. Marie, Jordan, Emma, Andre, they all have to save all the non-soups on campus from the murderous rampage. And then suddenly, just as Marie explodes Kate's arm, because now Kate has gone crazy because Kate was on all this medication and being repressed for all these years. Her arm gets exploded, and then Homelander shows up out of nowhere. And that's essentially the end of the season.
They had so much to work with, right? Okay,
Yeah.
build up all season. Vought being the manipulative presence that it's always been.
Mm-hmm.
That looming presence of Homelander that has been through the boys and now into here, and even how Godolkin University has this dark underbelly that's revealed and everything going on. There was so much they could have done with that, even with the idea of a like resistance effort, like a coordinated effort. But what they did just felt like carnage for carnage's sake, and like they just let the people loose and they wreaked havoc on everybody, but it felt so chaotic and disorganized and not well thought out, where it could have been this like really epic like battle scene, and there could have still been the same amount of carnage, but just like more thought out and strategic, which I feel like it lacked.
It certainly lacked that. And then the sudden shift of these students who were released from the woods, and Sam and Kate, they're the bad guys. When all of them are being manipulated by Vought and all these other people, they're just as much of victims as anyone else who has been injected with Compound V as a child. But they're now being honed in as the bad guys, where it's just like, this very odd, like I saw someone say online, like, I don't know who to root for, because it seems as if they're all in the right but all in the wrong at the same time. But I did like that Ashley had her last minute of effort of, oh, let's make whomever can kill off these people part of the seven. It's just Vought always wins. Like, I think that was the message at the end of the
They
day.
clearly set it up to move into season 4 of The Boys too, because we're playing with that soups first ideology that we've had throughout The Boys, and then also, you know, potentially with the seven, or even alongside Homelander, what type of role are Sam and Kate going to play there?
Right.
You know, whether it's big or small, or how are they going to impact that situation? And I just have a feeling that both of them eventually will realize the corruption and manipulation, and like have like that moment where they wind up facing off against each other. But we'll see, maybe because they still have, I think I said this to you, they still have their moral compass. And that's what was so interesting about watching Gen V, you know, that The Boys didn't have, because we're working with younger kids here that like haven't been through the Vought system, and they haven't been kind of like brainwashed into like following the herd and just doing what they're told. And they're not morally corrupt. They're still kind of following the straight and narrow, or they still at least have their own morals that they're following. So it'll be interesting to see like how they reconcile that with what this world really is, behind the scenes.
They all remind me of Starlight in the beginning of The
Yeah.
Boys. Very hopeful. I mean, Marie just wants to have a better life than what she had. Kate is went through her whole not being hugged or anything throughout her life. Sam has been manipulated, as well as dealing with very severe mental issues, and now he doesn't have his brother. So Emma with her Jordan with their parents, so they all have something. So it'd be very interesting in the second season what even happens to all of them, and hopefully they can all kind of align on the same side again against Vought. It was a very interesting season, Gen V. I mean, I didn't dislike it. I wouldn't say that I was as gung-ho for it as The Boys. It just got me through until the next season of The Boys, and I don't know if you felt the same way.
I think that my interest and investment in this season definitely grew as it went on, but it definitely had some pacing issues. So there were some moments where I was like question mark, or I would kind of just be thrown out of that world that I was brought into. So it was a little disconnected. Whereas The Boys definitely like hooked me very quickly.
Yes.
And it kept me invested. Now that we're getting towards later seasons, they have also lost their footing in some places too.
Yeah.
They haven't been perfect, but I would say my investment in Gen V definitely started out slower and grew as the season went on. And I can say I'm definitely excited for another season. I did like the way they ended it at the very end and how they set that up. So definitely looking forward to seeing what's in store for these characters in the future.
You saw the post-credit scene, right, with Billy Butcher?
Yeah,
I love Billy Butcher.
I know.
So on the fly, right, before we wrap everything up, on the fly, what would you give this out of 10?
Probably a 7 out of 10.
I
What about
agree.
you?
I say
Yeah.
7 is fair. I don't think anything low. I don't think it deserves anything lower, but again, I wasn't like
It was
really gung-ho
definitely
for it.
capable of higher.
Yes.
And I think if they had trusted themselves and even maybe spent more time on some of the different subplots, I
Mhm.
think it could have made it so much more than it was. I really see a lot of potential in this show, and hopefully now that they realize they do have some footing, people are interested, people are watching, hopefully then they'll take the time to explore a lot more of these characters than we got in season 1.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, I'm down for any stuff that is in the boys world. So more Gen V. And hopefully we get to see some of them even pop up in the next season of the boys. But yeah, I think that we got through our pros and cons. If anyone who's watching, if you agree, if you disagree, please let us know down below. If you are not subscribed, please, subscribe. It'd be nice. And Kelly, I know that you are just kind of getting back into the world and everything like that. But I mean, where can if you want people to follow you, where can they follow you? What can they find? All that fun stuff. I mean, you were at the Toronto Film Festival in the summer, so that was very cool.
It was. I did attend the Toronto Film Festival in September. I did last year too. I love it. I can't wait for next year again. But if people want to find me, they can follow me on Twitter at @KCantro or check out geekvibesnation.com. You can see what I wrote up from the Toronto Film Festival and just other thoughts on TV series and films that have come out along the years.
Absolutely. And you can find me on Twitter at TC_Stark. Please, again, check us out at geek5nation.com. We're always writing reviews, articles, opinion pieces, all that stuff. I am on TikTok a bit. So please also make sure you follow me at TC_Stark. And again, if you enjoyed Gen V season 1, or if you didn't like it, just let us know. And hopefully we will be back to cover The Boys season 4. Until then, bye.